All right, let's talk about a company you've probably never heard of, but it's one of the biggest telecommunications companies on the entire planet. Seriously, they've built this massive, almost hidden empire that connects a whole hemisphere. We're talking about America Móvil.
So just how big are we talking here? Well, let's just start with this number, 410 million plus. That's how many total customers, or accesses, they have. To put that in perspective, that's more people than the entire population of the United States and Canada combined, all using services from this one company.
And how do they even do that? Well, get this. They have over 1.4 million kilometers of fiber optic cable. That is enough to circle the Earth more than 35 times. So yeah, this is not just some mobile company. They are a colossal infrastructure owner.
And when you own that much infrastructure and have that many customers, it translates into this, a market cap of over $72 billion. I mean, that makes them the single largest telecom operator in the world outside of China and India. It's just massive.
So right, that brings us to the big question, the one we're really going to dig into here. How in the world did one company, starting out in Mexico, manage to build this unbelievable kind of hidden empire that's become the digital backbone for an entire hemisphere?
You know, this story doesn't begin like a typical tech startup in a garage. Nope. It kicks off with one of the most audacious moves you can imagine in the business world, the privatization of Mexico's entire state-owned telephone company, Telmex. And it was all orchestrated by one man, Carlos Slim.
So it all goes back to 1990. Carlos Slim's group buys Telmex. But here's where the real genius part comes in. He saw the huge potential in its little mobile division, Telcel. Then, in '96, Telcel launches this product that changes everything. Slim sees this, and in 2000, he spins Telcel off into its own company, América Móvil, laser-focused on wireless growth. By 2001, they were listed on the stock exchange and ready to go.
So, what was that game-changing product? Well, it turned out to be the single most important innovation for them. It was literally the master key that unlocked incredible growth and let them basically conquer a continent.
It was called the Amigo card, and it was a super simple prepaid model. Now today, this seems totally obvious, right? But back then, oh man, it was revolutionary. It just wiped away all the barriers. No credit check? No problem. No bank account? Didn't need one. No long-term contract? Gone. All of a sudden, for the very first time, anyone with just a bit of cash in their pocket could get a mobile phone.
And you can really see the impact when you compare the before and after. The old way, the postpaid system, was super exclusive. You know, it locked out the huge majority of people in Latin America. But the prepaid model, it just blew the doors wide open. It wasn't just a new way to sell phones, it was a strategy that democratized access, and in doing so, created a customer base of hundreds of millions of people.
Okay, so now they're armed with this incredibly powerful prepaid model, and the company just goes on a decade-long conquest. But this whole phase ends with one of the most bizarre, counterintuitive, and frankly shocking strategic moves you'll ever see.
Starting in 2001, América Móvil just went on an absolute buying spree. They were snapping up mobile companies everywhere, from Brazil to Colombia to Argentina. They even bought Verizon's Latin American operations. And then they took all these different brands, I think it was over 15 of them, and unified them all under one powerful new name, Claro. But then came 2010, and the craziest move yet.
$21 billion. That's what they spent on their next big acquisition. But it wasn't the price that stunned everyone. It was what they were buying. They bought Telmex, their own parent company.
I mean, at the time, market analysts were just completely scratching their heads. The common wisdom was that fixed-line phone companies were basically dinosaurs, right? They were in decline, so why on earth would this fast-growing, dynamic mobile company buy its slow, old, dying parent?
Well, because they weren't just buying a phone company. They were buying the data highways. See, Carlos Slim saw what was coming. He knew that the explosion in mobile data was going to need a physical backbone, actual cables in the ground to run on. And by buying Telmex, América Móvil suddenly owned all those pipes. The child company had literally bought its parent, all to control the future of data.
And that one move, that single decision, helped create what the company has today, this incredibly deep, structural, and almost unbeatable competitive moat. It's an infrastructure advantage that just walls off competitors.
So this moat is really built on three core pillars. First, their scale is just unmatched, which gives them massive cost advantages nobody can touch. Second, they own the entire infrastructure. I mean, from the undersea cables right up to the cell towers, end to end. And third, they've got this amazing built-in growth engine, a clear path to migrate all those millions of prepaid customers over to higher-value postpaid plans.
So what does all that dominance actually look like in the real world? Well, let's take their home turf, Mexico. Even with a global giant like AT&T in there competing hard, América Móvil's brand Telcel still controls a staggering 70% of the entire wireless market. 70%!
All right, so where do they go from here? What's next for this hidden empire? Let's take a look at how they're setting themselves up for the next decade. Because the future, well, it's all about convergence. You know, if you want to know the strategy, just follow the money. And it tells you everything. This is not just about mobile phones anymore. Of course, they're pouring huge amounts into 5G and fiber to the home, but look at this. Big investments are also going into enterprise services for businesses, using AI to make their networks smarter, and even getting into financial services.
And that really gets us to the heart of their future strategy. It's that word, convergence. It's all about bundling everything together. Your mobile phone, your home internet, your TV, even services for your business, all on that one massive network that they own. And that creates a package, a bundle of services that their rivals, who don't own all those pieces, will find almost impossible to copy.
Which leaves us with one last big question to think about. With this massive infrastructure moat they've built, is América Móvil's dominance permanent? Or could new technologies, things like satellite internet, or maybe a new wave of government regulation, finally build a bridge across that moat for competitors? The answer to that question, well, it's going to define how an entire hemisphere stays connected.